Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
Well, live at 6, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. So much for watching us and supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. We thank you so much for being with us here at 6 p.m. on what is a packed show. A lot of things to talk about, not the least of which is some sports, but also, obviously, weather. And weather leads because it is in the name, Mississippi Live Weather. Storms are likely. Some could become strong over the course of the next 24 hours. The important word in that list is some. The hope is that most do not, and more on that here as we look at a lot of different details in a minute. Triple threat will narrow it down for us as we look at the locations most likely to see some impact. That's coming up here in a few minutes. It's a new thing exclusive here to Mississippi Live Weather, debuted yesterday. We think it's a great tool to help us focus in on the worst of these storms. And our game of the week is here. We'll talk to our meteorologist Gabe and a new face to us here on Mississippi Live Weather, but maybe not to you at home, our Ethan Foster. That's coming up here in a few minutes. But this evening, as we look at the first 12, as you can see hour by hour here, we're 67 at 7 p.m., 66 by 10, 65 as we look toward 1 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, it's not much of a drop-off in temperature. We ratchet up the rain chances. There will be overnight thunderstorms. Some could be strong. Most will not be severe. And for many of us, our heaviest chances actually come tonight. That is a good sign as far as severe weather is concerned. Mississippi Live Weather Radar, Mama Justice Doppler radar again. We are looking dry and mostly clear out there. Only a few showers kind of showing up out here towards Senatobia and Hernando, but these are all very, very light on our scale. So nothing terribly significant showing up on its latest scans here close by. We got to go a lot wider to kind of tell the overall weather picture here. Again, just mainly clouds out there associated with this at this point as we look across the United States. And yeah, we're going to go that wide here for a moment. You can kind of see the players. This big storm system, the center part of the United States, that's kind of moving on through, kind of swooping on through. And then there's a couple little waves back behind us. They're going to work through this batch of clouds, a subtropical jet stream. Things have a tendency to hide in the subtropical jet stream. You might ask how? Because it emerges out here over the Pacific Ocean, where we don't really monitor things, and we don't get good reporting stations on it until it gets out here to Mexico. So sometimes little waves end up being more pronounced once they make it on shore and catch us late. That's one of the things when we look at tomorrow, especially late in the day, that remains one of the questions that we will attempt to answer. But as you can see here, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, some wintry weather, some wet weather out there toward Arizona. Of course, we have, speaking of sports, Ole Miss with the big bowl game tonight out there in the Fiesta Bowl, and we'll talk about that in more detail here in a minute. But before we get there, I want to show you this. This is different than the Futurecast we typically show, and I want to show it on the wide scale because I think it quickly tells an important point. When we look at this, all this kind of orangey sort of color here, that is fuel. Fuel for thunderstorms. Where it is greater, thunderstorms are stronger, more likely to be severe. Where it is not, and again, we're talking surface-based fuel, you could still have heavy thunderstorms, but they're not as likely to be severe. So notice how farther east that is the case here, where the thunderstorms are well, strong, but maybe not as severe. On kind of this wide shot here, and we will look much more detail at this, and just kind of first look here, you can see how we're displaced between where storms are ahead of the fuel, at least that surface-based cape, and where they're not. Where they're ahead of it, that's where storms are not going to produce tornadoes. And you can see for most of us overnight, well, we could have rumbles, we'll have thunderstorms, they are running ahead of this surface-based fuel, all this orange here, and that is a sign that our overnight thunderstorms, while perhaps loud, maybe strong, some hail, maybe some wind, are probably not going to produce tornadoes. So I want to be crystal clear on what we're looking at here so no one's like tomorrow, well, you hyped this. No. What I want to be clear about is that these are what we call elevated storms. And elevated doesn't mean a greater threat. Elevated means rather than forming from air down here at the surface, they form from air a little higher up there in the atmosphere. So that difference, an important contrast related to this here. So when we look ahead over the course of the next 24 hours, that is the morning chance. Loud, arguably disruptive, but likely not going to be a huge impact as far as severe weather is concerned, thankfully. Hopefully that remains the case there. Our hour-by-hour forecast has a 63 at 6 a.m., 66 by 9 a.m. We're 70 by noon, 71 degrees at 3 o'clock. And as you can see, kind of a break there in the middle of the day where the rain chances are less, but they come back in the evening. And that's one of the questions as we were looking toward that jet stream back to the southwest, that subtropical jet, where little waves move through there. That is the key. Coming up here in 60 seconds from the Room to Room Weather Center, we're going to be talking a little bit more to our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor. And yeah, you can see him and his sort of skills there. It does look like he is back for a moment. I think we might be able to go to him here for a second. He is at our Mississippi Live Game of the Week there in, well, let's go ahead and bring him on here. Gabe, are you good? Looks like his signal's in and out. Well, here's at least our forecast for our Mississippi Live Game of the Week. Nonetheless, as you can see, first tip temperature there, 7:30 start, 67. So it is obviously warm here, and this is in sharp contrast to the forecast that we have going on there in Arizona, which is obviously not nearly as warm. Looks like Gabe is up again. We're going to give this a go. Let's see Gabe Maynor. Nope, he keeps locking up. For one reason or another, it looks like he just doesn't have good enough service. Hopefully he's connected that hotspot there. Either way, coming up in 60 seconds, we're going to do a little bit more sports, whether that sports is related to high school basketball, and again, appreciate Casey Lott for sponsoring our Game of the Week, or whether it is Ole Miss football, which we absolutely will look at. That and your severe weather threat as Mississippi Live continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center right after this.
When you've been injured, don't settle for a lawyer who doesn't even know where you live. Call Langston and Lott. Local lawyers, personal service, real results.
As a bankruptcy firm, Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.
At First Choice Bank, we know you can't always make it before the bank closes. With our integrated teller, you can talk to a live person as late as 7 p.m. on weekdays and noon on Saturdays. It's not just an ATM, it's an ITM. First Choice Bank, your choice for banking.
This portion of Mississippi Live Weather is presented by Little's Jewelers.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
Again, thank you so much for staying with us here on Mississippi Live Weather. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon, and you're watching, again, our live broadcast here at 6 p.m. For folks looking at this little spin out here toward Arizona, this is related to a storm system that's going to bring us our storm chances for tomorrow. And yes, it's bringing snowfall and rainfall to the desert out there. We will check in on that forecast for Ole Miss here in a second. It does look like his live shot is stable. Let's see if his life is stable. Let's check out our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor there. He is at our Mississippi Live Game of the Week. Okay, what do we got? Nope, that's not going to work, but we're going to try something else anyway, because I know this will. Gabe, what you got?
Well, Matt, it's a great atmosphere over here in Biggersville at our Game of the Week. Of course, this is for our 7:30 matchup with Biggersville taking on Fourth later on tonight with the varsity boys. So right now, you can see that we are watching the varsity girls take on Alcorn Central. That is part of the Alcorn County tournament that is taking place right now and through our weekend. That score at the top of the screen, of course, 17-14. Biggersville is currently on top, but yes, we are awaiting that 7:30 matchup, and I'm going alongside, well, kind of, the last state champion 2023 and 2024. That is, of course, that varsity boys team that's going to be playing later on tonight. Hopefully a state title is in the running, but hopefully an Alcorn County title is in the running as well. We'll hear from our Ethan Foster, brand new member of the team, coming up later on in the 6 o'clock show. And we're excited to hear what he has to say about the latest on the stats with this matchup and where both teams stand heading into tonight. Live from Biggersville, meteorologist Gabe Maynor with Mississippi Live Weather.
Okay, got that fixed. So, Gabe, real quick here, we've kind of got this connection going. Everything good there? Everyone excited? Have you checked on? You can't even hear me, can you?
I can't hear anything right now.
Okay, we got to get those earpieces in for later. We'll talk to you here in a little bit. That's our Gabe Maynard out there in Alcorn County. Appreciate him. Appreciate Ethan for what they're doing. They'll have those highlights coming up during our 10 o'clock broadcast tonight. We'll have that from our Mississippi Live Game of the Week. Kind of an odd situation. Typically, we do not talk sports when we have severe weather. We've got a lot of things overlapping tonight. So I appreciate your patience as we kind of get through all of them. So 57 first play temperature for that Ole Miss game. Obviously, one of the biggest games in Ole Miss football history. We got to talk about the forecast and appreciate Carl Hogan Toyota for sponsoring us here in our SEC football forecast. We're 52 at halftime, 50 degrees by the final snap as far as tonight's game is concerned. In the Tupelo area at this instant, looking out, that temperature coming in at 66 degrees. The feels like temperature 66 because there's no wind chill because we're so warm. But that's that number right below it there, that measure of moisture, that dew point. That's an important number because that shows how much moisture is there. We're waiting on that to return. As we've talked about last couple of days, yesterday's front has stuffed that down to the south and keeping the most substantial moisture down that way as well. And again, appreciate Mitchell Cunningham and Bowling for sponsoring our Tupelo Tower Cam there. A low chance, and this is important, not necessarily even low chance, but low confidence in tornadoes because of that drier air we were showing you a moment ago that's in place, that's kind of limiting the overall amount of fuel that is out there. So I think the wind gust potential moderate just because we're going to have some gusty winds. We've had them today. We're going to have them overnight. We're going to have them late tomorrow as this storm system moves through. That's our greatest threat. I would say hail limited and flash flooding not impossible, but again, a limited threat as well. And probably the best way to kind of analyze this, again, looking at day planner over the course of the next 24 hours, we're looking at tomorrow morning pre-dawn, plenty of plenty of thunderstorms, non-severe, 70 by noon, 71 by 3 p.m. And apparently we're going to have that issue with the voice. So give me a second here. Is it one of those days where everything's going to happen? Apparently so. Let's dig into this and something you're going to see only on Mississippi Live. And this is our accumulated threat tracker, our triple threat. We're going to watch it go all the way through, and then we're going to come back. Now, what do you notice looking at the triple threat here? This looks better than it did 24 hours ago. So now we're going to walk through it much, much slower. So what you'll notice is looking at this between now and tomorrow morning, there's almost no threat for anything as far as rotation, wind of significance, or hail is concerned. Right? We would be looking for where tracks are left behind here for that. Wider shot, there's really not a whole lot of example areas to show you at that point in time. A lot more rotation tracks up here toward the locations toward Springfield, Illinois, but nothing of significance. So I'm going to go all the way through this, show you what something rough looks like, and then walk back. So what we're looking for on this is we're looking for spots where you see this red showing up. Or if we were to see some yellow to say more significant wind damage, or hail when we're talking about hail sizes. So the wind and the hail, there's really not a lot that shows up on this that reach severe levels. And so when we look here across Mississippi, this is a vast improvement from last night. So the quick takeaway on this, while that says Monday at 1 a.m., ultimately this is kind of the combined threat there. And where we will see the greatest threat around the region, probably your afternoon on Friday, but as you can see, that largely stays to the south. While we have a limited threat, try to get closer to us tomorrow evening. Again, when we analyze everything, for us, this exclusive triple threat, a positive sign there. That means the majority of the more significant weather is not over top of us with this storm system. So now let's walk hour by hour through your Futurecast here. Again, through tonight, spotty showers, as we showed you on Mississippi Live, Mama Justice Doppler radar a moment ago. Still some of those back in the northwest portion of the state. More light than heavy. Again, not terribly impressive. As we go there through around 11 o'clock, a few storms, a little heavier back out there toward Carlisle, Arkansas. And then as we progress toward 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, kind of this line here that develops, Kosciuszko back to Houston, back toward around Tupelo. Again, heavy rainfall, some gusty winds possible out of this. But when I say gusty, I don't mean severe winds. Okay? So a good sign there that these should be below severe limits at that point in time, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And as we talked about at the beginning of this forecast, will these be loud? Yeah, I do think that'll be the case. Winona, Yopor are out here toward Amory. But will they be producing tornadoes, damaging wind, or large hail? Will we qualify as severe? No. I don't think so based on what we're looking at here. Now, that's something we'll look at again at 10 o'clock, but I do not think, based on what we're looking at here, that those are going to be severe at that point and time. So looking at the risk area, while this says Thursday, this is tonight's risk that extends through 6 a.m. tomorrow. This in place because of that line of storms I was showing you. And I think another add-on there to show you that tornado risk really locations back to the west, just in case really something develops the next 5 hours or so back out here that's stronger. Storms should be moving into here and strongest over top of northeast Mississippi and east Mississippi at the point at which they're at their weakest. So a positive sign there. Low temperatures, mid 60s, low 60s. Again, are typical for this time of year, 34. Way above normal, up to 65 there, Cleveland, 62 for Bruce, 63 degrees there in Houston, and 64 for both Starkville and for the Columbus area. So here is that risk area for tornado risk on your Friday, mainly southern portion of the area. I'll widen it just a little bit here to kind of show you. I think that if I'm making an estimation on how this will go, based on what I'm looking at now, I could just as easily kind of trim some more on the north side of this off. I mean, we even talked about this last night. I don't know if I go quite that second line there, that we really thought the bullseye was down farther south. Certainly that still looks like that is the case. So that's something we're continuing from our broadcast last night when we were looking at this. Here's Futurecast, and you can see, again, the majority of the rainfall ahead of this front, south and east, and this front will actually kind of transition here to sort of a warm front overhead. So it will remain a focal point where storms could develop, but clearly Meridian, Hattiesburg, down here south. As we talked about during our midday update, most projections kind of have this wall here where moisture, the more significant instability, just can't make it this far north. Nobody's going to complain. That's a good sign for us, though still severe weather threat there. Notice, though, the last couple of frames, you start to see these lifting northward. That's, again, that extra moisture trying to move northward. And that's, again, why later in the day that threat has gone up a little bit more, especially back there toward Louisiana, right? So high temperatures, low 70s for tomorrow. And then as that moisture starts moving northward, we're watching back there into Louisiana for these storms to get a little stronger. As they move there closer to south of Greenville toward Jackson, that really is the focal point. Let's bring it in here. And again, a reminder on Mississippi Live weather, kind of the cutoff for our main coverage area. You can kind of see the shadowed area here, Kosciuszko back toward Chula and Hollandale. In saying that, if we were to have a significant tornado down here, we would be doing coverage on that as well. So we will do some coverage, for these locations for tornado warnings. The takeaway should be we're within a county or two here. Kosciuszko and Chula or Louisville or Macon from seeing something that could potentially produce a little more damage. But north, and this is again where most people that watch us, most people that have the app downloaded live, up here farther north, that's not what this is. This is non-severe, this is rainfall, this is rumbles. And as this main system kicks through, it's going to get fairly breezy. We'll probably have wind gusts 35 miles per hour or greater, and maybe bring down some tree limbs, even some tree damage potentially in a very, very isolated way in some very limited fashion on some storms. That's a possibility, as you can see, as this kind of kicks through the area on your early Saturday morning. And as it does, much cooler air moving in on the backside as rainfall moves on out. So temperature-wise, we're looking at around a 54 for the low there in Houston on early Saturday morning, 53 in Cleveland. Watch this for a second. Look at these 51s up here, Senatobia, South Haven, Tunica. Keep that in mind. Keep that 51 degrees for some of those spots. I point that out because a big kind of contrast northeast back to southwest because of this front moving in. And the air is a lot colder behind it. The winds pick up. You could argue for a wind chill a good chunk of Saturday, which is obviously a huge reversal from where we're at. Northwest winds behind this continue to be breezy. And while we have some isolated showers popping up, I expect the drier air means we're not just cooler, we're back to cold, back to the 20s, back to the point where maybe you might need one of these. Our good folks at Absolute Cleaning and Restoration, as we've talked about, they had something online. They're giving away some of these faucet covers for folks that need to cover their faucets in around the area, a way to kind of give back to the community. I think we're probably going to need those more in the extended forecast as well. So I pointed out the 51s, right? We show high temperature 57, 57, 58. Here's the deal. Only about 6 to 7 degree increase in temperatures on Saturday. It's going to feel a lot cooler and near 70 for locations south and east. So as we look at that forecast hour by hour tomorrow, big headline is this. Number one, are we going to have storms? Yes. They're split. Pre-dawn, again, probably below severe limits. Late in the evening, probably below severe limits. In both cases versus what we're looking at 24 hours ago, this is a lot better. Hopefully something that continues in our trends. And at 10 o'clock, we'll be looking at those trends because, again, how things evolve, and not just one model, but all of our models, is where the confidence level comes in on that. So things looking better there. Saturday cooler. It'll never feel like 63 for a lot of spots. It'll feel cooler than that most of the day. And then mid-30s for early Sunday morning, 45 Sunday afternoon, mid-20s early Monday morning, 48 by Monday afternoon. And then from there, we do warm things up a bit more. But again, this is where those faucet covers become necessary because, I mean, it's not impossible to have some lower 20s out there by early Sunday morning as we are dry heading into next week. Okay, coming up here in 60 seconds, we're going to check in again with our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard. He's at our Mississippi Live Game of the Week presented by Casey Lott. We're also going to answer any of your questions. Hey, you know what? I got nothing to do until dinner time, and dinner time's not till this broadcast is over, so we're going to make sure you have what you need to know. That's as Mississippi Live Weather continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center right after this.
As we move into storm season, here's something most homeowners don't realize after a storm. Roof damage isn't always obvious. Wind can lift shingles, breaking the seal. Hail can bruise them below, and flashing around chimneys and pipes can loosen without you ever knowing. That damage may not show up for months. If your area has strong wind or hail, a professional inspection will help bring you clarity before small damage turns into bigger problems.
March 24th, 2023 was a normal Friday. You know, we knew the weather was not good, but we needed to take shelter, and we didn't have shelter. My husband and almost 2-year-old daughter, Ethan and Riley, they did lose their lives in the storm. We're still recovering from it. We'll always be recovering from it. Matt Lopon cares about the community. He's not just there to collect a paycheck. I feel like Matt Lopon has proven himself trustworthy.
Well, welcome back here to Mississippi Live Weather. I was going to try to get one of our newest cameras up there in southern Alcorn County up, but I didn't get that done in the break as I was kind of looking at some other stuff here. But we do have somebody that knows what's going on there involving some folks up there in Alcorn County. That is our meteorologist, Gabe Maynard. We're bringing him here. There you are. You're at our Mississippi Live Game of the Week. Can you hear me, Mr. Gabe?
I can. I mean, it's a little mixture of Matt and music, but I feel like that's the best combo you could possibly have, right?
Well, you don't want to see me dance. I don't know about that. So what is the vibe out there? And do you have any idea how close we are on our voting for band and cheer squads of the week, as well as everything going on there?
Well, I know it was a very tight battle between both schools. We're talking about Corinth and Bakersville as we head into the, of course, student section vote and the cheer squad vote. But let me tell you, both sections, very peppy, bringing the energy, whether you're an away team or a home team. Everyone is out and about tonight. I mean, you can see a little bit there behind me of just how many people are here tonight. Parking lot's filled. Of course, it was hard to find a parking spot coming in. But I'm joined tonight, not by myself. You might notice I have both my hands free. We're joined alongside our brand new member of the Mississippi Live Weather team, our very own Ethan Foster, back in action. Now, you might have seen us before, of course, on a different channel, but now we are on Mississippi Live Weather. And, of course, Ethan, the sports expert, and he has the stats that you need to know as we head into tonight's matchup at 7:30.
Now, you notice he said sports expert. I don't know about expert, but I do love sports, and I did spend all of the last 45 minutes prepping for this game to figure out what you guys need to know and what you want to know, too. So, obviously, we're here at the Alcorn County Tournament. We got Bakersville and Corinth coming up. Bakersville, as we mentioned earlier, last year, they won, not last year, 2 years ago, they won the state title, 2024 state champions. Their last game was 2 days ago. They're coming off of a 58-51 win over Middleton. So they're riding high right now. Their star player, Brooks Seago, had 25 points, player of the game material right there. Of course, last year, let's talk about last year. They lost to Coffeyville in the tournament to, of course, the eventual 1A state champs. Coffeyville winning it all last year. So that's Biggersville, of course, 1A state champs 2 years ago. They're looking pretty good right now, 8-4 on the season. They're 5-1 in district, so they're asserting their dominance. They're feeling good right now. Let's talk about Corinth. The thing I love about these tournaments, Gabe, you've got Biggersville 1A, you've got Corinth in 5A, and they're about to duke it out. But the funny thing about this is you might expect it to be 5A is going to dominate 1A, right? Not so fast, my friend. Last year, almost a year ago today, on January 9th, 2025, guess what happened? Corinth lost to Biggersville, 68-44. Okay, wow. 5A losing to 1A. You know where I'm from, Gabe? Where are you from? 1A, Hamilton, Mississippi. So I take pride in the 1A Stars. But of course, to break it down, where Corinth's at, they're 7-7 right now. They're 1-2 in district. So again, Corinth is not really where they want to be. Biggersville is feeling good about where they're at right now. Last year, Corinth was 10-19 in the 24-25 season. 4-6 in district play, and they lost in the first round to Gentry. So again, not their strongest season. They're wanting to turn that around. They're also coming off of a win. They beat Tishomingo County 2 days ago. So again, both these teams coming off of a win. They're feeling good. And again, for Corinth, this is kind of the revenge game. We'll see if Biggersville wants to give up a win or a loss here at home. Really looking forward to this matchup tonight. I think it'll be a good one.
And the matchup happening right now, we do have varsity girls playing behind us. And as you can see on that score at the top of your screen, dominant fashion right now, 28-18. Whenever we talked to you guys last time, it's 17-14. So Biggersville's representing well, not just in the crowd, but also on the court. And a big thank you, of course, to Ethan for giving us all that breakdown. And we're excited at 7:30 to have that matchup for you here on Mississippi Live Weather. If you have not done so, go vote for who you want to win student section and cheer squad of the week. That vote happening now. We're wrapping up at the end of the broadcast. And a big thank you to Casey Lott with Langston Lott for allowing us to come out here and showcase some of this local action to you here on Mississippi Live Weather. But Matt, I know that things are heating up on the court. We're also talking about the skies getting a little bit more action-packed. What exactly do you have on our Mama Justice Doppler radar heading into tonight's severe weather threat?
Well, Guinea, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. We've got to update folks on where we stand on those voting. We'll get to that, and excited for your highlights, of course, tonight at 10 o'clock. Thank you all so much for everything you're doing out there this evening here. And as we bring things back in here to the studio and kind of pull this up full screen, if we can for you, just a moment, right like that there. I thought that would work right. Hold on, Gabe. I got to make sure I get this right. There we go. Okay, I appreciate that. And then we'll change the background behind me. Okay, so as far as voting goes right now, Biggersville only down versus Corinth on the student section and pep band for the week. Corinth sitting at 228 votes versus 211 for Biggersville. Considering the difference in size of those two schools, that is very, very close. Voting wraps up right after this broadcast, so it might be hard for that to come back. And then as far as Spirit Squad of the Week goes, Corinth with 326 votes there versus Biggersville at 266. It does look like Corinth probably ends up winning, but still a few more minutes to go on that. And as you might have briefly seen a second ago, again, appreciate the folks there at Casey Lott for sponsoring our high school game of the week. Tip-off temperature, 67. Again, some light showers out there, but most locations are in the dry. And I got to let this go for a second so we can watch. That's our meteorologist, Gabe Manning, because we didn't have high school basketball highlights yet, so we had to get some college. Watch this shot. Oh, that one actually is a pretty good little curl shot. He's got one in there in the highlights where it's like some two-handed thing. Now, granted, I can't make anything. Watch me just throw that up there. We're going to end up with at least one Gabe highlight tonight. I know that's how this ends up going usually. Okay, let's go to Mama Justice Doppler radars. We kind of talked about there a few showers out there that we are watching, that have been watching. As we kind of look in a little closer on one of those up here, again, up toward Myrtle, Sardis, Como. That's about as close as anything is. As I could put this into loop mode, luckily nothing that's too terribly heavy on that. That's to be expected. The atmosphere is still pretty dry, so we have a ways to go before things get going on there as well. So someone was asking me here behind the scenes, and while we're doing this, I think we can pop this on up on the air at the same time. I have not got this completely finished, so we talked about me putting a background on that. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten that done yet. I was hoping to get that done before this broadcast, but that just didn't happen. But anyway, some questions out there. Your question, something we're watching. Appreciate y'all in Columbus. Our Kosciuszko camera. Someone was asking about that. Let's go ahead and bring it back here to the other mode as we zoom this on in for a moment, and we can kind of show that there. So the Kosciuszko camera there is the Breezy News on their tower there. So that part of town where it's at. There you go. You can actually kind of see some of those comments a little bit better there to the side. Appreciate y'all watching in Winona and Ware and all across the region. So before we go, let's take some time here for a moment. And if you don't mind, this is not a sign of bad weather or anything. It's just it gets warm in here. And so I'm just going to take off my jacket and let's answer some questions. I might as well loosen the tie while we're at it. We'll go a little bit more casual. Looks like there's a police officer there. But yeah, there is our shot there toward the church near Breezy News. And so that is where things are there in the Kosciuszko area as far as that's concerned. Let's go back in here. Any risk of freezing pipes during the cold weather? When we look toward next week, I wouldn't say that's impossible by any stretch. So let's see here. We'll need to go back over to show prep and swing down and show that 7-day forecast. Give me a moment here to pull that up. And so when we start looking there towards, say, 24, typically I get concerned when we have long periods of time below freezing. It's not just going below freezing, it's going below freezing and staying there, say, 24 hours. We're have enough sunshine around with this that it's not like we're cloudy. And so the reason that's important is if you get sun on the correct side of the house where you might have had a frozen pipe, sometimes that can, even just the sun hitting it, can actually warm it up a little bit. So I would always prepare as though we could have some freezing pipes, because it's not impossible that that number does go down and get a little bit colder. So I would say it's reasonable that we don't, but not impossible that we do. But we have a couple mornings where we're close enough, and that's the reason, again, folks at Absolute Restoration, giving these away, just kind of a way to help out the community there. Some of these little bags to go over top of the spigots to keep them from freezing. So it's really not a complicated thing either. You just kind of stick it in. There's a little rubber band that goes around the outside. If you really wanted to, you could make one of these, as we talked about at the beginning of the season. Just take a towel and either a rubber band or just tie it around there correctly. Find some way to just kind of secure it. You could just tie a big old knot around there, and that would protect folks from that. Making dinner while watching. Appreciate that, Jason there. Appreciate Bobby and the folks up there in Corinth. Other folks there agreeing with the downgrade on this. Chance for tornadoes in Holmes County any higher than it did yesterday? No. I would say Holmes County, all locations, the tornado threat looks lower than it did yesterday. Appreciate y'all watching in Louisville and Cleveland and down in the valley there, Water Valley, and all across the region. Don't have a lot of questions going back there, so let's see if more recently we have some questions. So, Calhoun City, Corinth, Louisville. Again, I would say Louisville of that list most likely to have some impacts, and I think in both cases we'll have rumbles overnight tonight, and then of course we'll have a better chance for some stronger storms tomorrow. The threat is solidly south of Louisville, but I wouldn't be shocked if it kind of wobbled up northward just a little bit more. That does happen sometimes from time to time. Chris was wanting to know if we get a hottie toddy for good luck. I'll give you a hottie toddy, gosh almighty. Who the are we? Flim Flam Bim Bam, Ole Miss by. Damn. Don't have to worry about FCC on here, but you know. Do want to set a good example, but I know that, yeah, it is what it is. See, I knew most of it. Kind of. Appreciate y'all in Ware and the Flatwoods there. In Hamilton, Alabama, do I need to stay up early morning when the weather enters the state, or will it just be rain and a chance of anything becoming severe? So I'll say this. No, you do not need to stay up. That's where weather call comes in. That's why weather call is important. I apologize that all the text is kind of over that, so I'll take that down here for just a brief moment. We can put it back up here in a second. But no, I would say as far as weather call is concerned, that lets you know if you have any issues, if you're in the danger zone. And I think largely we're not going to deal with any issues as far as that's concerned with the overnight chance. So do you need to stay up all night in Hamilton, Alabama? No. I'd go to sleep if I were in your shoes. Now, I won't be asleep. I'll be on starting at 6:30 tomorrow morning on Mississippi Live Weather Day. or earlier if necessary. Appreciate Kirk for watching there in Dumas. Maribel, chance for tornadoes in Holmes County look higher than it did yesterday. Note this not as we talked about. And we cover Holmes County. I'll be clear from Maribel, we do cover Holmes County. We do cover Dumas up there in Tippah County. Is it going to be closed for Winston County tonight? I don't think so. Linda was asking, is this one of those nights where you have to be like right there by a shelter? I would say no. I would say we're probably okay as far as tonight's concerned. These storms look to be elevated. And that means that they aren't organized in a way where they, get that rotation all the way down to the surface, thankfully. In saying that, one thing to keep in mind is we do, let's see if I can pop this up and if everything works correctly. We do have storm shelters on Mississippi Live Weather, msliveweather.com. So on there, a whole list of storm shelters for various counties around the area. It looks like I have this zoomed in a little too much. Let me shrink down the size so it kind of fits on the screen there. There you can see that. We'll make it look, but yeah, you can get to this on our app. There's a link in there to area storm shelters, but yeah. If you have concerns, if you want to know where your area storm shelter is, you can find that information at msliveweather.com. I kind of pop that up full screen for you. Sorry, I forgot that I hadn't done that as I'm over here. What's going on? Wow, back in the studio, that's misbehaving. So let's bring it back to here. And now we'll bring it back to there. There we go. I got to work on that that button there. There's something I left off of my button. So anyway, here you go. Here's our list of storm shelters around the region. A fairly complete list. There are some others that have been added. We're working to, again, try to get this updated, keep this updated for you as those come in. So there are a number that aren't listed here. So we'll be going over that list and continuing to try to add those as necessary. And again, appreciate all of the emergency managers, county folks that have invested in these storm shelters over the course of the years. So I'll see if, I wonder if I can, no, as soon as I move over here to click on something else, that's gonna, there we go. I'll kind of go down. Okay, let's see what other kind of questions we have there. What about Grenada County tomorrow? In better shape than some. Projected dew points in the area for tomorrow. Remind me in 2 seconds here. We'll look at dew points. I think that's good. Amory, I would say same thing. Most locations, those of us in Water Valley closer to fuel, do you think it will be good overnight? Yes. I think it would take something pretty extreme for us to have some issues overnight. So I'm hopeful that we're in good shape as far as tonight is concerned. But we'll be watching things, and that's the beauty of having this app. If something happens, we ping the app, and if you're in that danger zone, that's why weather call is important, because I am human, and I'm one day closer to my next mistake, because that's what humans do. We're really good at making mistakes, right? Wind picking up there in Louisville, Itawamba County, I think same thing. Really all locations here in North Mississippi, want to be clear on that. How do you get weather call? I have it through WTVA. So we do have, again, that link that we had up there a moment ago. You can get weather call through us on Mississippi Live. My voice comes through, lets you know if you're in the danger zone there. Will Angry be okay? And can we go sleep? Just joined. I will do a kind of big overview recap here at the very end as we wrap things up. What about Columbus? I'd say Columbus, you're going to have a louder morning than most. Same thing I would say in Starkville as well. Smithville, Okolona. Again, we could see this all wobble farther north. That does happen from time to time, and we're hopeful that doesn't happen. But there's been a clear trend southward overall on most of our projections there, which is why Chastity asking about Thaxton or Pontotoc or some other locations there. That's why I think you are in a better shape than some. We've got that chat up there. We'll go ahead here in a minute, and I'll try to do a better job of kind of making that look a little better for TV here in a couple minutes, or whatever this is. PTSD in Duck Hill there from last March's tornado. Hey, I get it. And that's why weather call hopefully is that thing that can kind of take that away and make it to where you're in better shape. Okay, so with that in mind, let's do a quick overview here. So here's Mississippi Live Weather Radar as of now. Not a whole lot out there. These are all showers. They're all fairly light. No concerns really based on what we're looking at this point here. Here is our severe weather risk for tomorrow. Well, will it start tonight? It does include most locations in the area. I do want to show you this over the course of the last 24 hours and how things have evolved with this, because I think that's kind of important. You'll see once it was issued early this morning, and I'll turn off again those fog advisories we had earlier today. Notice that the risk area has been expanded eastward as we've gone throughout the day and the night. That is the cover for some overnight thunderstorms. Most will be below severe limits. In saying that, the tornado risk, as you can see, there's a difference between the general risk right there, which is primarily for damaging wind potential, and the tornado risk, which is trimmed back some. And we owe that to a lack of fuel. When we look at the severe weather risk for tomorrow, this will likely be trimmed southward as well, based on latest look at this, unless something looks dramatically different coming up during our broadcast at 10 o'clock. I think this will probably be trimmed southward a little bit more. We owe, again, you can already see a little bit of that on the tornado threat that trims southward. It's just whether or not we can still get some damaging winds out of the line. That's the reason I think the locations remain as they are. And so the thing we will show, as I kind of work through this and kind of wrap things up, we had that 7-day earlier, but I'm going to go to basically our first graphic here, one of the first graphics that we showed. Again, looking at fuel on our Futurecast. Let's make sure that this is all the right stuff. And I'm going to instead make this the latest data. So in particular, we could focus in on the overnight rainfall and thunderstorm chances. And this kind of shows, again, fuel, which shows us where things are more likely to ignite, and storms where that's not as much of an issue, where you know, we want to see if these align. Obviously, where storms are, that helps us to understand. And so this is new data from even the beginning of the broadcast, believe it or not. So here's what looks to be a fairly hefty storm, midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. There, Winona. Again, I heard somebody in Duck Hill talking about a minute ago there. What do we need to think about these? Could they be strong? Yes. What does that mean? Wind. That might mean a couple little hailstones. What does that not mean? It would be unlikely, that might be the best way to describe it, unlikely for these to produce tornadoes. And the reason for that is because they are displaced from all this gold. All this kind of goldish, reddish color you see here is fuel for thunderstorms. But it's not just fuel, it's surface-based fuel. So fuel-based from the surface. Again, if a storm's spinning up there, but no tornadoes down here, it doesn't really matter as much, right? So in this scenario where you get storms out ahead of the surface-based fuel, these tend to not rotate and get the rotation all the way to the surface. They can rotate. We'll show spin on radar, but getting that to the surface becomes less likely when it outruns the main low-level fuel, which is what this is showing there. So that difference is hopefully kind of shows you where we have more concerns. You'll notice the fuel and the storms are a bit out of phase, but is it going to be loud overnight? Yes. Will you wake up and say, ew? Probably in some cases, but are we talking about have to run to the storm shelter situation? Probably not. Okay? Now, if that ends up being something that we have to look out for, I'm going to be here. We're watching things very, very closely. I'm watching things here from the Room-to-Room Weather Center. The beauty of the one I'm in at this moment is it's at my house, and I can walk right in here in a few seconds as necessary. But the thinking is that these storms overnight should be below severe limits. In saying that, I'll be on at 6:37, 7:30 a.m. That's at the latest tomorrow if we have some issues. But the takeaway in my mind is that most of those overnight storms should be below severe limits. And then to address what happens later on tomorrow, the expectation is we get a probably substantial break from storms around the middle part of the day and some later in the evening. Not high confidence on those becoming strong to severe. We'll have updates in the afternoon and evening as necessary. Keep it here for the latest. Appreciate y'all in Choctaw County, Crystal and Adrian there and Marcellus and everybody for watching us here on Mississippi Live Weather. Colbert County, Alabama there. Appreciate that. Let's see, as we're just kind of going through here, Cumberland, I'd say same thing. Wren, Lodi there. We're watching for you overnight, but most storms hopefully stay below severe limits. Keep it here for the latest.
The bravest thing that my dad has done has been going back to school.
It wasn't when he first enlisted, it was when he found his first support group.
The bravest thing she did is when she asked for help.